American society was chaotic. Anything could happen, could flip black and white at will. Today we arrive at a movie, The Green Mile, a movie where you only need toe black to be guilty. The main character of the film is a big black man named as John Coffey. John has a special ability to heal all wounds, physical or injuries, physical or emotional. He even could resurrect a mouse that had eaten. Though holding the greatest power on earth, John still had to live all his life in misery, and even received a death sentence despite doing nothing wrong. Why is everything so twisted like this? If you're curious too, don't go anywhere. Sit tight in front of the screen and let me guide you through The Green Mile, one of the best prison-themed films in the world. On par with Shawshank Redemption, Green Mill Ice, another name for a prison called Cold Mountain Penitentiary. It was called that because its floors were tiled green. It was also the final stop for inmates before they were executed by electric chair. The story begins in 1935. The main character is Paul Edgecombe, who was working as a guard at the Green Mile prison. Paul suffered from urinary inflammation for years. That means what? It means he had trouble peeing. Every pee was painful and made him lose all confidence in bed matters. But let's talk about that later. One day, when the sun was shining a bit, a very special prisoner was escorted to the Green Mile. He had a massive body. If not totally too big for a normal person, Paul looked at the death row prisoner with a not so comfortable face. Partly because it still hurt when he peed, partly because he'd never seen such a large death row inmate, most importantly, because this guy, Percy Walden T. Shut up. A quick intro. This guy was technically a subordinate but happened to be the governor's nephew. So he always acted cocky, showing off like I got powerful friends kind of attitude, so naturally. No one liked him. In contrast with Percy, small but cocky, the giant prisoner was strangely gentle. John answered the guards' questions with a very soft voice mixed with the suffering tone of the powerless. His eyes often welled up, looking as if he could cry anytime. Especially, John had a terrifying fear of being alone in the dark. Hearing that, Paul was like, bro, you guys think we've got the right guy? With the instincts of someone experienced, Paul felt something was off, so he decided to reread the entire case file. The tragedy happened in a rural, remote area. 2 little girls from one family suddenly went missing. Suspecting his kids were kidnapped, the father called on the villagers to search the whole area to find the culprit. The search quickly brought results. When the villagers came across an extremely gruesome sight, the 2 poor children were lying in John Coffey's arms, heads blooded. John was screaming, and without further investigation, John was immediately sentenced to death that night. Paul went home with a heart full of doubt and confusion. He couldn't understand why a gentle, kind man like John could commit such a heinous crime with those tangled thoughts circling in his head. And on top of that, the pain dwelling in his lower parts. Paul once again spent a night away from his beloved wife. He dragged his tired body back to the prison the next morning. Paul's job continued like any other day today though. He and his co-workers. The special thing about this moose is that it was bold, not afraid of people throw it anything, it would eat it. Then it would crawl back into the isolation room, a sealed room. But what was it doing in there? Paul and the others pulled everything out of the isolation room to find the mouse, but no mouse at all, nor any hole or tunnel in the end. How the mouse escaped, Paul didn't know. Nor did anyone else. They just knew that in the following days it kept appearing before everyone gradually got used to its presence and weren't annoyed except Percy. This guy hated it passionately, and was willing to do anything to kill it. Paul was not pleased with Percy's attitude. He said actions like this could agitate the prisoners. The more Paul warned, the more Percy acted smug, which made Paul and the others really annoyed. Just short of laying hands on him, but they didn't because he was about to be transferred soon. So Paul decided to endure for a few more days. Let's pause these prison dramas for now. The real movie begins. The thing is, before each execution everyone had to rehearse several times. Toncha the prisoner would go quickly and with minimal pain. Their execution procedure was very simple. The prisoner would be placed on a luxurious ergonomic chair designed specifically for the prison. Then the prisoner could say their final words before receiving a wet sponge on top of their head. The reason for that was to ensure the electric current flowed directly through the brain. Percy seemed quite excited about this method. What a twisted freak. The first to be executed in the film was Alan. Alan was someone Paul rather liked ever since he arrived at Green Mile from a murderer to a reformed man clearly. However, that didn't matter. A crime was still a crime and had to be punished. Witnessing Alan executed made Percy ecstatic, so much so that even when Alan was gone, Percy kept mocking and insulting to the point where everyone else got mad and wanted to punch him a few times. But if they did that, it'd be like resigning on the spot, so Paul switched to a softer tone and tried pleading for Percy to transfer soon to restore peace in the prisoner. So you want me to leave, right? Then the next execution let me be the instructor. You guys assist, you hear that? I'll leave after that. That way, both sides win, right? Okay. As long as you get out of here. In another development in cell number 7. Something magical happened called Mr. Jingles actually. That's not the guy's name, it's the name he gave the mouse. This prisoner was named Dell. Somehow Dell managed to tame and turned Mr. Jingles from a regular mouse into a smart mouse. Seeing that the mouse was harmless, Paul allowed Dell to keep the mouse like a pet. Contrary to Dell's joy that night, Paul wasn't happy at all because his lower body kept protesting, begging to get checked for UDHARD reached the chronic stage if not treated immediately. Then most likely from now to the end of his life. The only thing he could do with his wife was just watch, but maybe due to being busy or lazier maybe back then. Being sick like that, having that problem was embarrassing, so the next day Paul just went to work and silently endured the pain. However, something unexpected happened that day. The Green Mile prison welcomed another prisoner named Bill Wharton. Bill had a face that looked emotional at first glance, but then in a not so emotional moment, Bill single-handedly wrecked the prison, knocked out the guards, and dared to kick Paul full force in the groin. After a struggle, the team finally subdued the mad dog. Luckily, no one was seriously hurt except Paul. The critical blow worsened his condition. Paul collapsed on the floor in pain. Suddenly, a deep voice echoed, "I need to speak with you right now." "It's nothing, just a stomachache." "Go ahead." Paul hesitated but eventually approached John a bit closer. Sounded a little sus, but Paul still trusted him. As Paul got closer, John suddenly hugged his small frame. His other hand reached straight down below. Dell rushed up in panic upon seeing this, but John wouldn't stop. Squeezed even harder, so hard that the ceiling bulb exploded. Only then did John let go. But wait, he started coughing violently, and from his throat some kind of substance burst out like a hive, exploding, then vanishing like it never existed after releasing it. John was drained, asked to rest a bit to recover his manner. Paul still hadn't recovered mentally. He felt like he got a system update. Paul slowly entered the restroom, and then, surprise, surprise, it was Paul's most satisfying and comfortable pee in 10 years. Returned home in a joyful mood, Paul suddenly found his wife strangely attractive. Male hormones surged like a tide by 8 p.m. that neither was determined to teach his wife to pronounce the alphabet from A to Z in 19 years. Paul had never had such a happy night, and to repay John's favor, Paul decided to visit lawyer Hammersmith, one who once defended John in this Casado, reopened the case in hopes of finding some proof to prove that John was innocent. Contrary to Paul's expectations, that lawyer never really wanted to defend John. In his eyes, black men were no different than dogs, normally harmless, but once they go rabid, they could bite at any moment. Hammersmith didn't deny that John was a good man, but he didn't believe John was good full time. After hearing that, Paul knew this guy was racist, so he still held his belief that John was a good man with decades in the job. Paul knew what bad people looked like, and John definitely wasn't one of them. Neither were Dell and his mouse, but that guy Bill Wharton? Absolutely. Day after day, Bill tried every way to provoke the guards. This dude got so arrogant even the guards lost count of how many times they threw him into solitary. But sometimes Bill was kinda useful. Once he scared Percy so bad he nearly peed himself. Percy, once full of pride, feared nothing and no one, but now Percy couldn't raise his voice. Luckily, Paul was a good man and promised Percy that what happens in Green Mile stays in Green Mile. Thought from then on that kid would learn to respect elders. But nope, and on one fine day while Paul was giving Dell a little talk before his Execution before the man was taken out for. Execution suddenly Percy spotted Mr. Jingles along the corridor and Percy stomped, hard crushing Mr. Jingles right in front of Dell, and the guards then casually walked away like nothing happened. Right when Dell was at his most hopeless, John reached out and asked to save Mr. Jingles with his black magic. John brought Mr. Jingles back to life again, and the shock and confusion of the prison guards finished dealing with the mouse. Paul and his colleagues went to Pacito. Teach that guy a lesson, either behave until you're gone from here. Tomorrow I'll tell the world how terrible your piece smells still the same. And then the next execution day commit was a stormy, thundery day. Dell sadly wished he had met the guards earlier. Maybe then he could have turned into a good man, but oh well. Maybe next life. Dell sadly handed Ratatouille to John to keep, then slowly walked into the execution room. The execution leader today, ironically, was Percy. Why do I say ironic? Because Percy never liked Dell or his mouse. When Dell sat on the electric chair, Percy was thrilled, even had a wicked plan in his head. Oh, you remember the sponge detail? There's one rule when executing prisoners: the sponge must be wet so the prisoner can go peacefully. Less pain, but Percy played dirty while no one was looking, placed a dry sponge on Dell's head. This part is too brutal, so I'll cover it. Just imagine a burning power poli. It was so horrific. Everyone stood up and left for Paul and the others. This was the most barbaric execution they'd ever seen. Though he wasn't physically present in the room, John still felt all the pain Dell went through. Percy's action earned him a divine punch. Paul was also furious, but on the bright side, Percy won't be here anymore, back in the cell. Paul saw John crying. Turns out not only John felt Dell's pain, even Mr. Jingles did too. Maybe because he couldn't take it anymore, so he left John's arms without a single goodbye. But anyway, let's leave that for later. The next morning, Paul and wife visited the boss. His name was Holler. Great career, but his wife was mentally ill, frequently unstable, her body deteriorating, no life left in her. Hal really wanted to cure his wife, but all doctors had given up. Maybe not all hope was lost. Paul suddenly remembered John's special power, so the next day he gathered the Brother Stowe plan, bringing John to cure the warden's wife. The plan involved everyone except this handsome young warden, because he had a wife and 2 kids. If he got fired, he'd have to eat *tan. So the plan began. The prisoner Bill Wharton was drugged for Percy. His luck ran out, caught reading hentai manga. Let's go off to solitary, you goons. All were set up. Paul went to open the door for John, who somehow already knew the plan thanks to some psychic power. While walking, John was suddenly stopped by Bill Wharton's filthy hand. The handshake wasn't tight, but John looked extremely hurt and angry. Spoiler alert, John had psychic power to see the past of anyone he touched, and in this scene, he saw Bill's crime. What crime it was, we'll see soon. Afterward, the team quickly brought John to Hal's house in the middle of the late night, bringing a prisoner to the boss's home at night. Sounds kinda wrong, but all of Hal's doubts were wiped away when he saw John perform black magic, bringing his wife back whole and beautiful, with no sign of illness. This is a real-life miracle. As usual, after using his power, John got tired and needed rest. The team knew that, so they quickly brought him back. But this time Paul found it odd because nothing flew out of John's mouth. Normally you'd see that. Could something have gone wrong this time? Turns out John kept it inside, waiting for the right time, and transferred it all to Percy. After Percy swallowed it, his face went blank, walked away slowly, dazed. Then he turned to look at Bill Wharton with teary eyes. Bang, bang, bang. Percy coldly executed Bill as everyone watched in shock. At that moment, the dreadful substance exited Percy's mouth and vanished. Paul, stunned, asked John why he did that. John didn't say much. He just took Paul's hand and showed him all the crimes Bill had committed. Horrifying visions filled Paul's mind. And guess what? John was innocent. The real killer of the 2 little girls was Bill Wharton. John merely found them and tried to save them. Even so, that wasn't enough to save John from the death sentence. Paul still asked if John wanted to break out like Michael Schofield, because all the guards were willing to help. John was touched but declined. He didn't want help or any favors. John was tired of living day after day alone, mistreated, and worst of all, seeing how cruel people were to each other. If life was nothing but pain, then he'd rather die, and so John officially refused his chance to live. And the final execution day arrived. John slowly sat in the electric chair as the victim's family hurled insults and curses at him. When asked for final words, John simply said sorry for existing. Paul held John's hand one last time, asking for forgiveness, and then it happened. From then on, Paul never attended another execution. He moved to juvenile rehab to stop crime at the roots. Fast forward to the present. Paul had aged into an old man, but not just any old man turns out. After contact with John, Paul was given something that extended his life for many. This would be a gift, but for Paul, it was a punishment for extinguishing a miracle from God. But you know what's more surprising than Paul's age? It's Mr. Jingles, the old mouse, still alive and well, probably because John also passed some of his power to him because of that. A mind-twisting question arises: if John could make a mouse live that long, then how many years will Paul have to live on this earth? No one has been able to answer this question.